Hello, welcome back. In the previous videos, we have understood various operators in Python. Now, let us understand about input and output statements in detail, along with understanding how to take int, float and string form of inputs from a user. It's interesting, right? So, let's get started. So, till now we have understood the different types of operators. We have started our journey with storing input in the format of a variable, right? Whether it is an integer or a string or a complex or a numeric. Then we have seen group of items like containers. We started with strings, list, tuple, set, dictionary, then different types of operators. Now it's time to see what is the importance of input and output statement, because it's simple. You see input, that means we are passing some value, and you see the result, that is basically output. When I say input and output statements, let's first see for a computer, what it is nothing but the purpose of the computer is to process the data and return the results, right? Because that is what it is done. Generally, the meaning of computer itself is commonly operated machine, purposely useful for technological and educational research. Computer, that's what we study on a childhood, right? So I just wanted to have a recap of it, because the main purpose is to provide, once we pass the input, because the data is given to the computer, is called as input, and it processes the data and it will return to the output. That means you give through keyboard and you see the result in the format of screen, right? That is basically general terminology of input and output. But how does we make use of output on our screen when we are using Python ideally? Suppose if you generally go for command prompt, if you open your command prompt, so generally if you go for command prompt, here if you write anything like print off or anything, it doesn't understand anything, because it is unable to initialize device PRN or whatever it says. Suppose if I give print, no file to print, right? So it doesn't understand what you're trying to give. It only understands the commands, whether you try to move from one location to another location, because it is simple, because that's where your DOS commands plays a key role. And in the same way, if you would like to see the output on your screen, on whether it is Python software, it is you use print function. If you go for understanding the output in C++ or in C, basically in C you use printf. If you go for Java, it is system.output.println. So basically, when I try to provide input to a computer, so Python provides some statements, as we are in Python programming language, where you just understand how do you take input and how you pass input, because generally we have seen like this: a is equal to 5, and I need not give print. When I call the variable, I get the result. But now we are going to understand how to use our scripting mode and what is the difference. Suppose if I give the same thing like this, if I give print of a, see, it is print is telling you it is taking some important function. It is a function, basically it's a built-in function, whereas it is not present in Python 2 version. It is added in Python 3 version, because previously we used to have raw input taken from user, but now it is print. Suppose it has value, whatever the value we are trying to give, separate, where you are having multiple values, how does the values are separated, and end, it is obviously ending with new line, so every print will be into new line. File, this means that whatever the default objects will be printed to the screen, that is system.standard-output. And when you see flush is false, that means it indicates that output stream will not be flushed. Basically, what do you mean by flush in programming? It is nothing but, when I say buffer flush, it is nothing but the transfer of computer data from a temporary storage area to the computer memory. That is the definition for a flush. Even you know what is the use of flush, okay? So when I give print of a, you get the result. Even if you don't give print, you are getting, because you are using in interpreter mode, or you are in kernel, you are using Python shell. If you use print of empty, nothing will be printed, it's an empty space, right? Now we will understand, we will be using the same Python shell, but to make use of understanding the better usage of print function, we will be using scripting mode, right? You click on file, you click new file, you get your scripting mode. So here, if you don't write print, if you save like this, okay, I will try to save it on desktop, and I give something like erd, the file name, any name you can give, the location desktop. If you run this, click on run, you have run module. I already told you how to configure, you can get so many things on this. If you run this, You see, you don't get any output. The kernel is restarted, there is no output. Why? Because you did not give print. No. How do you see the result? You write print off. See, that is where you take the variable, you save it and you execute it. That's how you get the result, right? So this is how the importance of output statements you see in Python. You only use print function. Now let us try to understand the various forms of print types in the next video.